Her study buddy booked a hotel co-working room with linen service. I sat next door, built the Wednesdays folder, and ended room 412 for good. I knew something was off the night Emily came home with perfectly organized notes that didn't match the chapter her course had covered that day. I'm not a mind reader, but I am a list guy. I'd helped her color code the syllabus. Her study session was supposed to be on cardiac rhythms. Her notebook was full of renal mnemonics. Wrong week. Wrong page. Too clean. She said her study buddy, Jason, pushed her hard because the exam could make or break internships. Fair. Except her calendar invites kept landing in the same cafe across town. And when I checked the place out online, it wasn't a cafe at all. It was a hotel with a co-working floor they marketed as quiet rooms. Classy rebrand for a line of rooms with doors that lock from the inside. That I didn't go full detective. I did one simple thing. I grabbed dinner on my way home and tossed the paper bag with the receipt on the counter. While I was plating food, she cleaned up the mail and swept my bag into the trash. Later, taking it out, I saw another receipt at the bottom. Hers, from that cafe. It didn't list a latte. It listed room 412 for 2 hours. I told myself maybe the co-working thing is real. Maybe they needed walls. But the next morning her study kit had travel-size shampoo tucked in the pocket. And Jason's name started showing up twice in her planner. Once as study, once as review. 2 entries, same address. It didn't feel like prep. It felt like a routine. I made a new folder on my phone called Wednesdays, because that's when their sessions magically stretched the longest. If this was in my head, the week would clear me. If it wasn't, Wednesday would circle it in red. I set Wednesday like an alarm. Her calendar showed 2 stacked blocks at the cafe, both marked study, both pointing to the co-working floor of the hotel. I booked the room next door under my own name. Nothing dramatic, just a notebook, a pen, and a timer. If I was wrong, I'd waste 2 hours and buy myself clarity. If I was right, I wouldn't need a speech. The hallway smelled like carpet cleaner and lime. My door closed with that soft hotel hush, and suddenly I could hear the building breathing. Air vents, distant elevators, shoes on commercial carpet. At 2 minutes past the hour, the wall on my right thumped lightly, the kind of bump a bag makes when it misses a chair. A minute later, there was the sound of zippers and the padded rustle of a jacket. Study rooms don't usually come with that kind of unpacking. I set the timer for 1 hour and wrote the first line in my notebook. If this is innocent, it won't need rhythm. Innocent noise is messy, pages, highlighters, mouse clicks. What I heard instead had patterns. Long stretches of quiet, short bursts of laughter, the muted skid of something against the carpet, then a breath that didn't belong to flashcards. 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 12, no pens, no keys, no tap-tap of typing. Just a room working through a script I already understood. At 30 minutes. I opened the scheduling app and pulled up my reservation. Next to it, Emily's check-in glowed green with the same room 412 number I'd seen on the receipt. It felt like the hotel had printed the truth and taped it to the door. To make sure I wasn't inventing things, I stepped out to refill water at the end-of-hall dispenser. On the way back, a housekeeper's cart stood by 412. Through the cracked shade, I caught a flash of 2 silhouettes, one t-shirt, one messy bun, moving closer than the word review ever needs. Back in my room, I laid out the ordinary evidence. Her campus schedule listed a lab that afternoon. The lab group chat, which I was in because I'd helped format a study guide last month, lit up with a message from her partner asking where she was. The group got an answer claiming traffic and a late bus. The bus tracker showed no delay. The truth was a floor below the lobby pretending to be a latte. When the hour mark hit, I heard what sounded like a shower switch and the quick hum of a blow dryer. Study rooms don't offer toiletries. Co-working floors don't stock towels. The door of 412 opened at exactly 64 minutes. 2 sets of steps. The faint tap of a hotel key dropping back into a bag. They didn't talk in the hall. They didn't need to. Patterns don't apologize on their way out. I stayed put for 5 more minutes, letting my pulse learn how to behave around facts. Then I stepped out, walked to the elevator, and noticed the co-working invoice sticking from the pocket of the front desk printer. It was a duplicate for internal records, face up on the tray. Emily's name, room 412, 2 hours. The timestamp sat on the line like a full stop. I didn't take the page. I didn't confront a clerk. I took a photo from the edge of the paper where no names, but ours showed. Saved it into the Wednesdays folder and titled it like a promise, not a cafe. On my way out, the lobby mirror did that cruel thing mirrors do. It gave me a version of myself I didn't recognize. Not angry, just done pretending that coincidence wears a keycard that I walked into daylight with one plan for next week. If the wall was the only thing between their truth and mine, I'd make sure it wasn't the only witness that I walked into the next Wednesday like a person carrying a level. Everything either lined up or it didn't. Same building, same floor, same cheap lime hallway. I booked the room beside 412 again, set my phone to airplane mode, and opened a fresh note labeled timeline. The rule was simple: no guessing, only sequence. The elevator camera ticked out their pattern before the wall did. Emily arrived first, hood up, tote bag heavy with notes she didn't open last week. Jason came 10 minutes later, alone, eyes on his phone the way people look when they've memorized a door code. They didn't meet in the lobby. They never do. He took the stairs. She took the elevator. They landed at the same door with the thoughtless timing of a habit that I started the timer and listened. The wall gave me the same rhythm as before, only now I wasn't trying to make it fit a nicer story. Quiet stretches too long for flashcards. Soft thuds against carpet. Laughter that didn't need a question to happen. A muffled shower hiss at the halfway mark, and the buzz of a dryer working faster than time should allow. I wrote it all as stamps. 2:06. Her door thud point 2:16. His step stop at 4:12.2:19. Zipper, rustle. Silence point 2:47. Water on point 3:03. Dryer hum point 3:18. Key taps point 3:21. Door click. While the wall told its part, I did mine. I pulled up her lab attendance portal. Green dots for present, blank for absent. Today's row glowed blank. The lab group chat pinged with a teammate asking for data. A minute later, Emily's account dropped a pre-written, running late, that could have been sent from anywhere. I saved the thread to Wednesdays. No commentary, just a bridge from one fact to the next. When their door opened, they didn't walk out together. She slipped out first, hood up again, tote hugged close. He waited a beat like a stagehand counting to 3, then came out and turned the opposite way. Separate exits for a shared hour. It was smart, the kind of smart people think stays invisible because no one wants to do the math. Downstairs, the co-working desk printed 2 receipts, one for the room, one for an extra charge I hadn't noticed last time, linen refresh. The clerk, bored and efficient, stamped both and slid them into a clear tray to cool. I didn't touch them. I waited until the tray emptied, then asked to extend my own booking by 15 minutes. The clerk flipped a binder, scribbled my room number, and, without looking, set my extension on the counter with another slip beneath it by mistake that IT was a card authorization. Name, Jason Whitmore. Room, 412. Description, study suite plus linen. Signature, a hurried line that looked like someone trying to sign with their shoulder. I didn't pocket it. I didn't snap a full shot. I took a tight crop of the descriptor line and the timestamp and saved it next to the others. Then I slid the paper back under the stack exactly how it had fallen. The point wasn't drama. The point was a folder that wouldn't lie when opened in daylight. Outside, the air tasted like rain that hadn't decided yet. I walked 2 blocks to a coffee place that actually was a coffee place, sat by the window, and spread the timeline across the table with my eyes. 2 weeks, 2 rooms, 2 exits, one set of facts that didn't need paragraphs to explain themselves. I opened a new note called What to Say and wrote the only version that wouldn't collapse later. You skipped lab. You booked a locked room. The receipt has a room number. His card paid for linen that I will not live in a story that asks me to ignore timestamps and no speeches. No names for what they did. People get lost arguing words. Time doesn't argue. It just stacks. When I got home, the apartment felt like a set everyone had left in a hurry. Her hoodie on the chair. My list on the fridge, still trying to encourage good habits for an exam that didn't deserve my highlighters. I built a plain folder on the kitchen counter the way you lay out ingredients for a recipe you can actually make. Receipts on top, timeline beneath, attendance printout last. I added a single sticky note to the cover. We can talk in the kitchen at 7. No shouting. No acting. Just the folder. At 6:41 she texted, running late, study buddy is pushing hard. The words felt like a template with our names on mute. I left my phone face down, lit the over-the-sink light that makes everything look like morning, and made tea so my hands had something honest to do to T709. The door opened. She set her tote down, and the room tried to rearrange itself into last month. I didn't let it. I slid the folder forward and stepped back so it could stand without me. Her eyes landed on the room 412 receipt first, then on the linen line, then on the lab blank. I didn't narrate the page. I let the pages narrate me, what I'd noticed, what I'd chosen, what I wouldn't carry. When people get caught by time, they do one of three things: make noise, make tears, or make truth. I watched her choose her next hour. My pulse stayed where it belonged, inside my ribs, not on the table. This wasn't a confrontation. This was gravity. She stood over the folder like someone reading whether she'd already walked through. First came the flinch, then the tiny tilt of the head people use when they're searching for a kinder noun. The room receipt became a booth. The linen charge became a cleanliness fee. The mist lab became independent study. Each word tried to sand the edge off the same hour that I didn't argue vocabulary. I kept the sequence in front of us because sequence doesn't take sides. Arrival at 2:06. Second arrival at 2:16. Shower at 2:47. Dryer hum at 3:03. Two exits, minutes apart. Doors that clicked like punctuation you can't edit. Names drift. Time holds. She reached for the easiest raft, the claim that this had been once. The page underneath didn't raise its voice. It just existed. Week 2, same floor, same routine, separate exits. The photo crop of study suite plus linen, with a timestamp she couldn't put on a latte. The lab portal blinking a blank she couldn't mark present with a story that I watched the instinct to perform gather and then dissolve. There's a moment where people realize they're not up against a person. They're up against order. Her shoulders dropped into that recognition. She said it was pressure, the exam, the narrowness of future doors. Maybe all of that was true, but none of it lived on a receipt with a room number. Truth without timestamps is just wind on the counter by the kettle. Her phone lit up by itself with the politeness of a machine keeping promises. A calendar tile pulsed next Wednesday. Same hotel, same hour, already accepted. The screen didn't gloat. It just repeated the pattern. I decided not to invent a middle path. I set one rule on the table beside the folder like the last ingredient in a recipe you can actually make. Next Wednesday at that hour. Either we both show up and sit in that room to study with the door open, or we end this tonight and stop naming things we don't intend to keep. The rule clarified the room. There's a relief that slides in when you choose fewer options. She stared at the calendar square until the glow timed out and the tile went calm. The apartment felt bigger in the quiet because promises weren't fogging the windows. That I gathered the papers back into a single stack, not to hide them, but to keep them from turning into confetti. I slipped the stack into the Wednesdays folder and set it by the fruit bowl, like proof can share a counter with ordinary life. My hand stopped shaking, not because anything was fixed, but because the road only ran in two directions now. She moved through the kitchen like someone learning a new floor plan. I could feel her weighing the comfort of repeating the pattern against the labor of not losing me in small pieces. I didn't sell my side. I didn't audition for staying. I just stood there with time behind me and the door ahead. When she left the room, I didn't follow. I made tea the way you make any small honest thing after a large dishonest one. Steam rose, indifferent to our plot. I set 2 mugs down. One would go cold if we were done here. One would not if we weren't. The rule held the door frame like a brace. Next Wednesday together with the door open. Or tonight is the last Wednesday. That belongs to us. I slept light with the folder inside the cabinet and the decision sitting on the counter like a note you can read in. The dark. I got there early and chose a table you could see from the hall. The door stayed open wide enough to make lying inconvenient. A timer sat in the center like a small witness. I laid out flashcards, a pen, and the Wednesdays folder closed but visible. No speeches, just gravity with a spine. Emily arrived alone, 10 minutes to the hour, tote lighter than last week. She saw the open door, the timer, the chair I'd left for her. Something in her shoulders loosened, something else tightened. She sat, pulled a highlighter, and for once the room started to sound like a room meant for studying. Pages, caps clicking, the small, honest size people make when information sticks. 18-minute 12. The hallway caught a rhythm I already knew, steady steps. Not hurried, the kind that belonged to someone who thinks doors will open. They passed our doorway, paused, and continued. 2 minutes later, the same steps returned and stopped. A knuckle touched the frame, one polite tap that held a whole script behind it that I didn't stand. I didn't cover the folder. I slid it to the edge of the table and let the top page breathe. Room 412, study suite plus linen, 2 stamps that didn't need adjectives. The timer ticked. The door stayed open. The rule did the talking. He hovered in the hall long enough to measure angles. I kept my eyes on the timer and my hands on a blank card like it had something worth learning on it. Emily didn't whisper. She didn't look for a corner to shrink into. She underlined a heading and left the cap off the highlighter, as if to say air was allowed here. Silence works better than speeches when a person expects noise. He shifted weight. He didn't cross the threshold. He glanced at the room plaque like it could change its number, then at the folder like it might go away if ignored. It didn't. Eventually, the steps retreated down the carpet the way waves leave a shoreline. Slow, then gone. The room let out a breath it had been holding since the knock. For the next 20 minutes, the timer's red numbers counted a different kind of hour. Flashcards flipped. A definition landed. The open door stayed open. It felt like we were borrowing a version of us I hadn't seen in months. Quiet, present, earning our minutes. A T-minute 33. The co-working printer out by the desk stuttered out an auto-confirmation. The clerk set a slip in the tray and forgot it. From our seat, I could read just enough. A new booking for next Wednesday. Same room, same hour, same name that didn't belong to me. Patterns don't apologize. They repeat. I stood, took the slip to the counter, and handed it back without raising my voice. The clerk apologized to no one in particular and slid it under the stack. I returned to the table and placed the Wednesdays folder over my side of the desk, the past under my palm, the screen with the future still glowing on hers. The timer hit 45. That was the deal in my head. 45 minutes to see if a new habit could survive oxygen. When it chimed, I closed my pen, stacked the cards, and looked at the door that had stayed where I put it. Emily fixed the next block in her calendar while the old block still pulsed beneath it. 2 Wednesdays layered like transparency sheets. One true, one not yet. That I didn't ask for a speech. I pointed at the space between the bookings with the kind of stillness you only learn by losing sleep. This wasn't a trap. It was a choice in red numbers. Keep this door open together or keep secrets with doors that lock. She stared at the calendar square until the phone dimmed and woke again. Then, without looking up, she slid the screen across the table. One tap, one delete. The repeating block vanished. The room changed temperature by a single degree you could still feel. The timer reset to 0. It didn't judge. It just waited for another hour we might actually use. On the way out, the hallway felt like a corridor in a hospital after visiting hours. Quieter, not cured. At the elevator, a housekeeping cart rattled past loaded with linen I didn't need to name anymore. The door closed. Our reflections held still just long enough for me to recognize the man in the glass again. Outside, the air had the sharpness of a rain that decided not to fall. I put the Wednesdays folder under my arm, kept my mouth closed, and let the rule follow us home. Morning brought a new kind of quiet, the kind that hums right before a smoke alarm. An email hit my inbox at 7:14 a.m. Study suite subscription, monthly plan confirmed. Not my name on the plan, his, but her email listed as the user. The start date was yesterday. The end date was next month. It felt like waking up to find someone had moved a couch into your living room while you slept. I opened the portal. A neat chain of future bookings blinked in a row. Next Wednesday. The Wednesday after. All at the same hour. All room 412. Each one tagged auto-renew. I took a breath that reached the back of my throat and stopped there. We'd cut one line last night. The system had stitched it back before the floor was dried out. I walked to the kitchen, put the Wednesdays folder on the table, and wrote a new card in thick marker. One schedule. Shared and open, or we're done tonight. Not a threat. A door. 8902. The doorbell rang. I wasn't ready for him in daylight, but there he was, Jason, shoulders squared like a man delivering packages. In his hand, a folder, the hotel's logo stamped on the front in tired silver. My name wasn't on it. Emily's was, along with a second name, his, where the billing lives. He didn't try to cross the threshold. He held the folder out like it might burn. Maintenance asked me to drop this, he said. Too casual, too rehearsed. They had the wrong email in the system. I didn't take the bait. I took the folder. Inside sat a paper contract I didn't know they still made. Simple paragraphs, 2 signatures. One long line that could be anyone's. One that I knew to the curve, Emily's. Next to it, a checkbox ticked for auto-renew monthly. And below that, a rider with 3 words that made my mouth go dry. Guest access approved. Jason watched me read it like a man measuring a room for exits. I didn't narrate. I laid the contract flat on the table beside our folder and kept my voice level. Did you book the next for Wednesdays? I asked that he didn't blink. It's easier to hold the time, he said. These rooms go fast. Rooms don't go anywhere, I said. People do. He shifted. I'm just trying to help her pass. The sentence hung there like a picture with a crooked nail. Helping doesn't need locks. Helping doesn't need linen. Helping doesn't show up on my table in ink. Behind me, Emily came into the kitchen, hair tied back, face pale with a kind of awake that coffee can't fix. She saw the folder, the contract, the card with my line, and stopped 2 steps shy of the table. Jason glanced at her like a teammate who wants the coach's nod. Maintenance had the wrong email, he repeated, as if the second time could make the story taller. I thought you're done, she said. No drift in it. No apology. She looked at me. He's done. He waited for the performance that usually arrives to soften a landing. It didn't. The hallway swallowed his shoes. The door closed on a sentence he didn't get to finish. Emily sat. I didn't move the contract. I didn't cover the guest access line. She placed her hand on the table like you do when you're asking a bridge to hold. I signed this a month ago, she said. I told myself it was just for studying. I kept telling myself that every week. She swallowed. I canceled last night. He re-upped this morning. Because he could. Choice. There it was, the version of the word that doesn't make excuses. I slid the marker card between us. One schedule, shared and open, or we're done tonight. She read it once, then took out her phone and opened the portal. One by one, the bookings vanished. The auto-renew toggle flipped off. The guest access box unticked. She held the screen where I could see it, not like a trophy, more like a receipt for a decision. Then we make a new Wednesday, she said. Door open. Timer on. You and me. Or we break here, and I pack a bag by dinner. The room felt bigger with fewer futures in it. We picked a time, like picking a path. Slow, on purpose. She sent a single line to her lab group. I'm back this week. My fault I missed. No weather. No bus. Just the right noun. I slid the hotel contract into the Wednesdays folder and wrote canceled across a sticky note. Not to erase it. Nothing unwrites ink, but to label it for what it was now. Over. When the kettle clicked, we both jumped like people who've been living on fire alarms. I poured water. We waited for steam to stop pretending it was smoke. I didn't say it was fixed. I said the only thing that fit the morning. Tonight at 7, we talk about why this happened. No scripts. Just the truth. She nodded. No scripts. Just us. The contract lay quiet. The folder didn't blink. The door was still closed and open in the ways that mattered. We sat at the table that night with nothing between us but 2 mugs and the Wednesdays folder. I asked the ugliest question softly. Why? And let silence do the heavy lifting. Emily didn't try to make it pretty. I got scared of the exam, she said. I liked how easy it was to be told I was doing fine. I hated how small I felt when I wasn't. She rubbed the heel of her hand over her eyebrow. And I kept thinking I could stop next week. The kettle clicked like a metronome, trying to keep us honest. I told her what it felt like on my side, counting towels through a wall, timing a dryer that had nothing to do with clothes, watching a calendar square glow like a fire alarm. We didn't fight. We stacked sentences until the table held both of us without wobbling. At 8:11, my phone lit up with an unknown number. This is the hotel's co-working desk, a voice said, polite and tired. We're calling about a cancellation fee tied to your user account. Not my name. Her account. The card on file? His. They needed verbal approval to charge him for canceling the auto-renew. I looked at the contract in our folder. The box that had read guest access approved. And felt the shape of the trap, even canceled. The thing wanted to leave a mark. We'll handle it in person, I said. Tonight. We grabbed our coats and drove with the windows cracked like we needed the night to rinse us. The lobby carpet gave underfoot the way it always does when a building thinks it can cushion anything. The clerk recognized the problem before we finished the first sentence. It's the shared profile, she said. If a guest has access, both names get pulled into the charge. I revoked access, Emily said, steady. I turned off auto-renew. I'm asking you to close the account and remove every tie to his name. The clerk nodded and spun her screen toward us so we could watch the log flicker. Created date. Renews, bookings, linen, revoke, cancel. It was all there, a boring little movie that matched our worst week beat for beat. There's a paper trail, she said, and it's yours to keep. Print it, I said. All of it. She did. Pages slid into a tray. The activity log, the revocation, a letter-stamped account, closed with tonight's date. Then she did one better. I've added a note, she said, lowering her voice. No third-party access can be granted to this user again without in-person ID. That's you, she said to Emily. Only you. We turned to go and nearly walked into Jason. He wasn't dressed for a jog. He was dressed for a habit that thought it still had a key. He saw the papers in my hand, and something in his face tried to take a shortcut to charm. You didn't have to come down, he said to Emily, all soft edges. I was going to eat the fee. It's not about money, she said. It's about stopping. He tried to smile at me, man to man, like I might want the whole thing to end in a clasped handshake. We're good, he said. Read the stamp, I said, and held up account closed until the fluorescent light turned it into a mirror he couldn't lean around. He glanced at the clerk like rules were negotiable. She didn't blink. Sir, she said, you no longer have access to this account, this floor, or this user's bookings. We've documented it. He made a small sound people make when they realize the room won't bend. Then he did what patterns do when they hit a wall. They looked for a side door. We can still study on campus, he said. No, Emily answered, and there was no tremor in it. Find someone who needs you. We left him with the elevator's stainless steel reflection for company and walked into air that finally felt like outside. In the car, we didn't celebrate. We didn't call it healed. We called it closed and let our shoulders drop half an inch. Back home, I slid the new paperwork into Wednesday's activity log, revocation. No third-party rule. Then wrote finished on the sticky note that covered the old contract. Not fixed. Finished. The difference sat right in my chest. We set up tomorrow's study hour in our living room. Door open, timer in the center, 2 chairs facing the same page. She texted her lab group the time she'd be back and asked for the datasets she'd missed without blaming traffic or storms or fate. Replies came in fast and kind. Because people like rooms where truth doesn't echoed AT 1003, my phone vibrated on the counter. A single message from a number I didn't recognize. You made this harder than it needed to be. I didn't answer. I blocked it and put the phone face down for the night that we opened the book to the chapter we'd been avoiding and read 3 paragraphs aloud. Her voice shook on the first one and steadied by the third. The timer ticked like a new language, one we both understood. On my way to bed, I tucked Wednesdays onto the shelf behind cookbooks and a tape measure. Ordinary things that build a life. The folder didn't need to be the centerpiece anymore, but I kept it close that we turned our kitchen into the kind of room you don't have to explain. Door open, timer in the middle, 2 chairs facing the same chapter. The air felt normal for the first time in weeks. I wrote Wednesday, open on a sticky note, and stuck it to the kettle, because kettles see everything. We read out loud until the words sounded like ours again. 9:41 p.m. The apartment's quiet did a small wrong thing. Not a knock. A slide, paper against wood. I checked the hallway. No footsteps. Just a postcard pushed under the door, cheap hotel stock with a photo of a lobby fern. On the back, 2 lines in a fast, slanted hand, for 12. See you after exam. No name. No flourish. Just a number that had been trying to run our week. I set the postcard on the table like a specimen and watched the room decide what to do with it. Emily didn't cry. She didn't narrate. She stood, went to the door, and flipped the deadbolt like a period that we made choices in the order they needed to happen. Paper first. Then daylight. I took clear photos of the front and back of the card and dropped them into Wednesdays with the rest of the record that we checked our building app and enabled lobby camera access we'd never used. The timestamp showed a man in a cap pausing outside our door. 4 seconds at 9:40. The cap didn't hide Jason's posture from anyone who'd seen him wait outside a study room. Emily opened her phone and wrote one line to him. No edge. No openings. Do not contact me again by any channel. Then she blocked the number on messages, calls, and every app that might pretend to be a hallway. I emailed the hotel co-working desk a summary, dates, room, cancellation, postcard, and asked for a written note that no third-party access would ever be granted again. The manager replied inside 10 minutes with the exact sentence and attached the account closed letter we'd gotten in person. It wasn't panic. It was order. Order makes rooms bigger. AT 1012. The lobby camera caught the same cap again, lingering by the elevator, then leaving empty-handed. I printed the still to Wednesdays and wrote a sticky. If he shows, we escalate. Not legalese. Just the next step. We slept with the living room light on like a lighthouse. Not because we were afraid of the dark, but because light keeps honest hours. At 4:12 a.m., the motion alert pinged, because of course it did at 4:12. The cap moved past our door and never stopped. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe that was all the point needed to be. The number is not in charge here. Morning meant daylight again. We walked to the leasing office with the postcard and the camera still. The manager didn't need a speech. "We'll log it," she said, tapping keys. "If he's not a resident, security will escort him off the property next time." She posted a quiet note for the front desk. "Do not admit study visitors." It wasn't drama. It was a building learning a rule. Back upstairs, we made a small ceremony of claiming the hour. Books out, timer on, door open. At 15 past, the kettle clicked. We didn't check the hallway. We turned our pages. When we finished, Emily slid the postcard into the folder and wrote "not coming" across its face in her own handwriting. She didn't mean him. She meant the future that keeps you waiting at the wrong door. That night, she sent one more message to her lab group. "I'll lead data cleanup after the exam. Hold me to it." 5 thumbs-ups rolled in like chairs making space. Accountability is a better room than promises. Before bed, I taped one more note inside the cabinet where we keep the good glasses. If it doesn't happen in daylight, it doesn't happen. The apartment felt like a place again, not a route. The timer sat quiet. The door stayed just a door, and 4:12, for the first time, looked like numbers instead of a plan. Exam day didn't need speeches. We walked to campus early, sat in a sunlit corner, and read the same paragraph until it belonged to us. The hour felt ordinary in a way that made my chest go quiet. When the proctor said begin, Emily's pencil moved like a person who owed no doors an explanation. Outside, the air had that clean post-storm feeling even though it hadn't rained. We crossed the quad, turned toward the street, and there he was. Jason, half a block away, hands in his pockets, not moving, like a bad idea that thinks if it holds still it might turn into a memory that I didn't look for words. I reached for the Wednesdays folder. We walked past him without breaking stride and straight into student affairs. The receptionist had the kind of kindness that knows how to be a lock. "We'll need your documentation," she said. We laid down the stack. Room 412 receipts, linen charges, the subscription contract, account closed letter, the postcard, and the lobby camera still. Boring pages that tell a story without adjectives. The dean read like a person who believes paper. "You've revoked access, blocked contact, and documented an unsolicited approach at your residence," she said. "We can file a no-contact directive, notify campus security, and send a formal trespass warning to the co-working hotel on your behalf. If he appears on campus or at your building again, call us. Don't negotiate. No drama, just daylight." Security took copies, asked for descriptions, and added 2 instructions to the record that felt like breath you can keep. Escort if seen, document every attempt. They offered to walk us out. We said yes. On the steps, the sun didn't feel like a spotlight anymore. It felt like weather.my phone buzzed before we reached the curb. An unknown number, new one, pushed a single text through the filters. "I'm sorry." No excuses, no reasons, no room numbers. Just the smallest word he hadn't used when it mattered that I didn't reply. Emily didn't look at me for approval. She walked the last 10 feet back inside and asked the dean to add the message to the file. The dean printed the screenshot, date-stamped it, stapled it to the packet, and wrote in neat block letters across the top. "Case open. Contacts logged that we left by a different gate because patterns don't get to pick our routes anymore." At the corner, a bus hissed, a kid laughed into his phone, and a crow tried to solve a French fry. The world had the right size again. Back home, we put the folder on the shelf next to the cookbooks. Not displayed, not hidden, kept. Emily took the postcard with 412 on it, flipped it over, and wrote one line across the front in thick pen. This is not our schedule. She slid it back into the sleeve and closed the cover that we made tea. We set the timer. We opened the next chapter out loud. It felt like moving furniture back after you've mopped. Same room, floor finally dry. The phone stayed face down. The door stayed a door. And 412 stayed numbers. Student affairs moved fast. By noon, the no-contact directive was in Emily's inbox with a copy to campus security and the hotel's management. It was written in plain words that even guilt couldn't misread. No calls, no texts, no messages through friends, no showing up. Violations would trigger escorts and reports. Not debates. 2 hours later, the hotel replied on letterhead. Access permanently revoked. They attached a note to Emily's account that required in-person ID for any change. A small bureaucratic lock that felt like a steel door. Boring, beautiful policy. At 4:12 p.m. Because, of course, the phone lit with a last call from a new number. We let it ring into silence. It went to voicemail and died there. No reply. No counter-speech. Just a record for the file that we wrote our house rules on a sticky note and pressed it to the fridge like a contract we actually wanted. If it doesn't happen in daylight, it doesn't happen. No locked rooms. Not at hotels, not in stories. Open door. Timer on. Same page that we document once. We don't relive forever. Then we did one gentle thing to mark the end. We moved the Wednesdays folder from the table to the shelf behind the cookbooks. Kept, not displayed. Emily took the postcard that had tried to be a plan, wrote, "Not our schedule," across the front, and tucked it inside the sleeve. The inevitable what-ifs in my chest didn't vanish. They just ran out of places to hide. That night we studied like the hour belonged to us. Door open, timer steady, voices low. When the chimes sounded, we didn't rush to fill the quiet. We let it mean finished, not broken, sometime after midnight. I taped one last line inside the cabinet with the good glasses so I'd see it pouring water. We don't live by room numbers. Emily smiled when she found it the next morning. 412 finally looked like what it had always been, just numbers, and our life, for the first time in weeks, felt like a room we could keep. Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story that we post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.